What's going on, everybody? This is Daniel Harms of the RGR Football Show. Today is another film review, and we have one of the guys that really has to take a next step this year. He came in last year, was really good, but he's going to be in his sophomore season, and we get to talk all about Nick Bolton on today's film review. This is going to be one of the more fun ones that I've done because I'm excited about the future of the team at defense. Wait, it's going to be different. It's not going to be great this year, but in 2 years' time, we're talking about a team that's drastically getting younger. They're getting more instinctual. They're getting harder hitting, and they're getting better at tackling. And Nick Bolton is going to be the leader of that aspect, and how he can do that by just showing up on the field and playing every single day exactly like he did last year. Think back to the Tennessee game where he came in and basically was the starter for Anthony Hitchens, and he was the guy that was stopping Derrick Henry on the goal line. He can do those kinds of things, but like every player, there are things that he needs to take a step forward in this year. So just a little bit of statistical analysis to begin. Nick Bolton last year only had 10 pressures, and when you look at his tape and watching how he blitzes, he doesn't get off blocks very well. I don't really want him blitzing. The linebackers that I would like to see blitz, Leo Chanel and Willie Gay, then bring in some of the other slot guys and some of the corners. I think that they're a little bit better and they're a little bit faster at doing it. I don't think Nick Bolton is the best blitzer at the NFL level. He's a bit too small for that. So probably keep him in his zones, and we're going to see how he got better at that this last year, even throughout the season. Only a 5.6% missed tackle percentage last year. Very good, sure tackler technique-wise, and very strong hands for a guy who doesn't look like he would have very strong hands. Very impressive. One interesting little concept that I didn't understand, that I didn't know until I watched him. Last year, he played one game where he almost had 100% of the coverage snaps. One game, period. And it was his best coverage grade last year out of every game that he played. Very impressive for a guy who is typically taken off of the field in obvious third down situations and obvious passing situations for more athletic linebackers. But it was very good in that game against the Chargers. And that was the Week 15 game, I believe, against the Chargers, where he played almost 100% of the snaps. So really impressive. Again, 49 stops. Those are tackles that result in a failure for the offense. So basically, like anything that's not 4+ yard gain, he is very good at getting in the backfield, sinking underneath some blocks, and able to instinctually see how plays unfold. He's going to get better at that this year. He had 2 pass breakups. Both of them were against the Chargers that week, funny enough. 50 pass rush snaps. Really probably going to stay around that range, underneath that, I would imagine. Then almost split with coverage and run defense. 349 coverage and 333 run defense. I imagine that goes a little bit higher in run defense and obviously total overall. But his pass rush and his coverage were the 2 most lacking areas of his obvious tape, and then there are some other technical things that we'll get into for his better and his more improved stuff that we'll see this year. But let's go ahead and jump into the film, because this is going to be one of the more fun ones that we have gotten to talk about, because as Nick Bolton is pretty much playing the Sam backer role last year, which is not his ideal spot. He did a much better job of identifying coverages, getting in those zones, keeping his head on a swivel like you're going to see here. He's just looking for guys that can come into his zone. And as that apex defender-ish, he's supposed to be looking for guys that come across his face, anybody that can possibly get behind him. You see there, he looks to the inside initially as this receiver goes behind the linebackers. His eyes went here initially. Now he's looking at Keenan Allen, just keeping an eye on things, keeping a good idea of where players are in relation to himself. And then you're going to see Austin Eckler come out of the backfield, and then he closes right there on Eckler. So there's no area for him to throw the football. And then once again, finding the quarterback, eyes, hand up, always like he does. That's one thing he does very well, is find ways to get his hands in passing lanes when he's in that depth. Those are some areas that he really did a good job of improving last year. Again, this was the game in Week 15 where his coverage grade really improved, and you can see the steps that he's taken, because for a guy who's not the best lateral mover, the best man coverage defender, getting to those spots in your zone, identifying where the receivers are coming from, identifying where your responsibility is, and then getting back to that quarterback are very important to him growing and being a guy who can come in on those nickel sets with Willie Gay next year. Very important for him to take that step this year again and continue to be an impact player in those areas and find those zones and get to those spots, finding the traffic around you. So once again, he's on the field. This time he's mugging up to the offensive line. Things that we're going to see again with Steve Spagnuolo's defense, you're going to see linebackers mugging up a lot to try to make the offensive line think a bit more. But then again, getting back into his zone, nice depth there, triggering on the pass underneath. This is one of those plays that calls for a stop. It's a 3-yard gain, probably about a 3-yard gain, but he does a good job of not letting Austin Eckler get outside of him. He keeps him underneath. Austin Eckler is a shifty dude. He can break tackles. He can make guys miss in open field. This is open space. There's no one around except Nick Bolton. Again, close. And as Eckler tries, he really does. He tries to come off of it this way as Nick Bolton's coming this way. But again, strong hands. Good technique. He's down. He's low. Lowest man wins. He's lower. He gets a good job. Gets it wrapped around him, and then he brings him down. Very, very short tackler in open space against shifty guys. He's going to make some misses every now and then. Every player does. There's no player that is always tackling 100% of his players. But he is a very short tackler. I'm hoping that rubs off into some other players. Willie Gay. Ding, ding. Got some quotations around there. Willie Gay was not very good last year with his tackling. I'm hoping he's been working with Nick Bolton because he needs to improve his tackling. There was multiple times going just through Nick Bolton's tape where I saw Willie Gay get downhill and yes, go get him. And then he misses the tackle. So I'm hoping to see both of those guys continue to grow and help him rub off on Willie Gay a little bit because he could really improve. This is where I was more impressed with Nick Bolton. Obviously, the growth in his coverage and getting those drops is always a very impressive thing. It's needed in today's game. One of the most important aspects, obviously, throwing the football. Being better at that is always going to be and pay dividends. But what Nick Bolton does well, because we see here, this is your 3 linebacker set, okay? And he's playing the Sam-ish sometimes. This is more like the, he's playing the Sam right now. You've got multiple guys, so he's on the strong side. Gap discipline in the run game, okay? If you watch the Bengals games, all the Bengals games, pretty much whenever they were under center, they ran the football. That was it was almost identical. You go back and watch them. If they get under center, you can almost guarantee that they run the ball, which is another reason I was a little more irritated with them in these games. But neither here nor there. This, you can really do a nice, excellent teach tape of gap discipline and maintaining that gap discipline, because as we see in the next up close, you have very obvious roles that we get to see him play out. Gaps that can be defended. Typically, you have this edge rusher maintain the outside discipline, which allows Willie Gay to be in this C gap here to maintain it, to see it through fruition. You have Tershawn Wharton inside of this B gap, and then you have Anthony Hitchens shaded to the inside of Derek Nottie, who's in this opposite A gap. So he has a little bit of directionality here to go either way to really helps that see that gap unfold. But as the middle linebacker, you can't just commit to it because you have other responsibilities to be able to come along with. And then you have the edge defender here with Nick Bolton kind of shaded here. So he's also into this B gap. This is a really good teach tutorial for gap discipline, and the Chiefs do actually a really good job on this specific play of maintaining gap discipline and forcing Samaje Perine, who's not the most athletic guy, he's not the burstiest guy in the world. It becomes pretty obvious where he's going to go, but Anthony Hitchens does a good job coming downhill, shading towards that opposite A gap / B gap. We have nowhere else for him to go, so we know Samaje Perine can't really bounce it outside from this spot. Bolton does a good job triggering, and you have Anthony Hitchens helping inside on that B gap. Boom, come in, short gain for nothing. So again, gap discipline, maintaining that gap discipline. Nick Bolton does a good job because when you have that motioning out, you still have to follow suit. So he's essentially lined up in this lane, we call it this lane, where he's the apex defender, okay? This is when you're in between the tackle and the slot receiver who's out here. This is what's called the apex defender. So you also have to defend the lane because you know that this edge rusher is going to set the edge, but you have to make sure to account for a possible bouncing of the outside. So it was a good job of him seeing that Samaje Perine isn't going to be able to really do that. Had it been Joe Mixon, maybe he's a little more hesitant to just get downhill. But again, gap discipline, maintaining it, seeing it unfold, and doing a good job of coming downhill and tackling. So he's a very good run defender, comes downhill into those gaps. He sees them very well, and then he's able to get in there and tackle and really maintain his gap discipline. So one of the other areas that I think he's going to be used in a little bit more next year is riding these tight ends up the seam, because he's not the biggest guy in the world. He's a bit smaller, but I think he does a very good job of growth in this department. This is the playoff game against the Pittsburgh Steelers. He didn't play the first time, but again, he's inside that hip pocket. He's just holding on, and he's doing a good job of just riding him out. He's not overcommitting. He's just being a little bit more physical. Those are things that he needs to continue to improve upon and get better at, because he's going to be asked and tasked to play man coverage at times. And those are the areas that he really did struggle last year, is man coverage and changing direction one way to the other are not his strengths. So again, keeping in mind that all players grow, and then Nick Bolton did a good job last year of really getting up in coverage and coming up big at times, I think that he's going to be taking another step forward. Some areas that he does need to improve upon, like we're going to talk about right now, that didn't show up to continue. One of the biggest areas of concern that I had of Nick Bolton coming out was his play strength, which is not surprising for a guy who's a little bit undersized, especially when you asked him to be that Mike linebacker. But when you're playing as a Sam, you have to be more of a strong presence. Like Leo Chanel this year is going to come in and be a Sam, and he's a physical dude. He's bigger, he's clearly stronger, and that's going to be big help for him coming in. And Nick Bolton's going to be the Mike this year, so he's going to be lining everybody up. But when you have this, inability to really get off of blocks at times, it impacts how you get in there. He's a much better getting underneath blocks and kind of sifting through traffic than he is when he gets squared up by an offensive lineman. It's more difficult. He gets pushed in and it gets pushed out, and really just getting off of those blocks is difficult. Like right here, he can't really extend. He just kind of gets pushed out of the way. Fortunately, it's in the red zone and other defenders can come in and help. But this is where I want to see him improve, because he needs to get the leverage and the technique, in my opinion, down a little bit better. Attack, try to use that inside hand, and then use your better athleticism for some of these tackles. Try to get under there in between. Use your speed, your downhill quickness, and be able to get out of the way a little bit better. He does a very good job for the most part, but at times he's going to get caught up and he's going to get caught in the wash. You just have to be able to keep working and get in off of those blocks. One of the biggest key components to getting off blocks in the NFL is play strength. That's another area where he does need to grow. He's going to come downhill. Again, do a good job here, getting in where he needs to be in his gap. Comes down, boom, right there. Boom, that just gets pushed out of the way. Like he's just moved. He barely gets touched, and he's just kind of moved out of the way. You're going to see when he comes downhill, he just kind of gets bumped out of the way. He's got to get in that play strength right here. If you're going to come downhill with your eyes in the backfield, hands need to be up. You got to start jarring him. He's got to feel your presence as a linebacker. You have to be able to feel that presence. So I'm hoping to see some play strength improve. And again, that comes in from speed to power too. We see it all the time with edge rushers. When you can transfer that power from your legs into your hands, you can get some severe pop and you can push them. Just get into that tackle. Do what you can to use your strength and technique and get some quick jabs up. You can move them out of the way a little bit and maintain your own discipline in that gap. So just some play strength improvements I think could be just fine. He's going to be very good in run defense for the most part. He's going to get downhill quickly. He's going to beat a lot of these tackles to their spot anyway. But again, just improvement on that play strength is going to help him in multiple areas, also carrying those tight ends upfield. But he's going to 100% be an impact player everywhere. Every time he steps on the field, he's going to make a play. And getting downhill as those lane defenders and getting upfield right here. Again, good job. Dissecting what's happening. He's going to make plays. He's going to make plays for this defense. And when he can get downhill and he can find ways to impact the game, again, does a good job of taking a trajectory here, realizing I have a clean path to the quarterback / running back. There's no one that can impede my traffic. So if he steps around that block, boom, quick swim move, nothing. Into the running back, no one there. He's going to throw it. So I get my hand up and on the ball. Instinctual, very, very quick to reacting play. These are all things that resonate with Nick Bolton. He's going to be a big playmaker, and I can't wait to see both him and Willie Gay as the 1-2 linebacker with Leo Chanel backing him up as that Sam and maybe as an edge rusher in some packages. But I think that Nick Bolton taking a step forward can only help this defense and Willie Gay be a continual threat to stay young, stay quick, stay fast, get down. And I expect him to be able to get some more tipped balls this year, because he does a very good job of getting his hands on anything around him. So instinctually, great player. I'm excited to see what he does this year in this defense. And even for all the reservations that I had in coverage, his side-to-side movement shows up. It's not great, but you can find ways around that, get him more in the zone, and have him running back and forward. Try to limit the side-to-side movement as much as you can. You can find ways to work around that. Instincts, speed, hitting, That's what this defense is turning into, and I'm excited to see it. Nick Bolton's going to be at the forefront of that, leading this defense with Willie Gay, and then you have Brian Cook in the back end with Juan Thornhill, who's finally fully healthy for the first time in his career, with Justin Reed, who's also going to be a speed youth and come downhill and hit people. This is going to be fun. It may not be the best defense in the world, but at the least you can say every single week there's going to be somebody making a big hit, making a big play, and I think that Nick Bolton every single week is going to make multiple big hits, multiple tackles in space that are really going to help define this young defensive core. I'm excited. If you can't tell how pumped up I am about this, like, I don't know what to tell you. Like, just go watch something else. This is exactly the kind of player and mentality you have to have. Yes, I've changed my tune on Nick Bolton, as we all should, with better information in the way that he played last year and then reverting his role to a limited role as the season went along. He's going to have a full-time role this season. I can't wait to see what he does. Make sure in the comments, I want to see who you guys think is going to emerge as the second rotational linebacker. There's multiple guys on this roster that could take that spot outside of the three we know are going to be the starters. I assume that Leo Chenal is going to be that Sam, but you never know. Maybe someone surprises. Maybe someone takes his job. Who do you think that could possibly be? I want to see who you think is going to be that rotational player in this Ben Neiman type role for Steve Spagnuolo. Let me hear it in the comments. Make sure you guys hit that like, hit the bell, and the sub notification. Please, helps us out so much as we continue to grow with this great Chiefs Kingdom community. Tomorrow, tune in for Seth, Ryan, possibly myself, maybe not Ryan, maybe just me and Seth. We'll figure it out as it goes along for the Chief in the North, and then everything that we continuously do here at the RGR Football Channel. Can't wait to see you guys next week. Have a great day.
Thanks for watching this video from the team at RGR Football. Click these videos to see more and subscribe to RGR Football.